Welcome back to Bombastic Nation and Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Giant and I'm back with some more vibes for you. Yes, I. And this one we're going to look at here is called The Americans That Fought for Germany in World War II. I ain't never heard of that before, so I want to see what's going on with this here. The Americans who fought for Germany in World War II. This, this, this seems like it's going to be something interesting to figure out here. The next thing I would like to figure out is whatever happened to them if they survived. I'm gonna have to look that up too. But anyway, let's go ahead and YouTube and simmer and see what this is all about.
This episode is brought to you by Call of War. Call of War is the free online PvP strategy game played by millions of users worldwide. In the game, you can join the war with the country of your choice and fight other players in epic real-time battles. Conquer the world in challenging games over several weeks with up to 100 real players per map. Start in a historically accurate World War II environment and rewrite history as you want it. In battle, use the strengths and weaknesses of different unit types such as tanks, planes, and ships. Choose your own strategy to dominate your enemies, tank rush your opponents, establish air superiority, or bombard coastal cities. As you grow stronger, you can also invest in the research tree to use a command subscription for free, available only for 30 days. The Americans that fought for Germany in World War II, 1933 to 1945. Before he had declared war on the USA on December 11, 1941, Hitler held the view that it was a decadent country plagued by racial problems and social inequalities. It is widely known that Hitler and his
Racial problems. Remember when Jesse Owens was there, when Hitler was in power, and Jesse Owens was there winning all them races and stuff? Oh, he was like, all aloof about it. And what are you talking about? You know what I mean? Usually, the people that have the problems in their countries or the propensity to have that sort of a idea about life, try to pawn it off on somebody else, don't they? I see it happening right now, right here. They call it reverse racism. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Don't jump me up and ting, don't go, oh yeah, what do you think? It does happen. But a lot of the times people just try to use it as a tool to deflect their own feelings. There we go. I said it. Ha.
Entourage were watching American movies, but for the German public they were banned for fear of spreading decadence. In the Führer's opinion, the Democrat Franklin D. Roosevelt was a nuisance who was not leading America properly. He also discounted the United States due to its neutrality laws and their America First policy of isolationism. Though he believed that the final conflict for world hegemony would be fought between Nazi Germany and the USA, he underestimated his future enemy. So, with World War II rapidly approaching, he pleaded that the Volksdeutsch, people of German heritage outside the Reich, should return home to the fatherland and help defend it. Many German immigrants who came to America still bitterly remember the anti-German hysteria that swept across the United States towards the end of World War I. Many things associated with Germany were boycotted. When America declared war on Germany, public pressure brought to an end most German-language newspapers, German-specific social and cultural activities, and the use of the German language in the service of the Lutheran and Reformed churches. In many places, even Beethoven was banned. In 1914, 24%...
that is so interesting there. Sometimes we get caught up in our own struggle. We don't think of that. And I'll be honest with you, I never really thought about how the Germans were treated here after the First World War, because as I said, they were painted as the enemy. In a video I watched where they were talking about the misconception about the First World War, you know what I mean? They paint them as enemies. So I'm gonna have to look this up. How were Germans treated after the First World War and after the Second World War? Were they treated the same as Muslims are treated today? Were they ostracized? Apparently they were, because they banned German newspapers. A lot of German things that were prevalent in the culture here were sort of ostracized. Wow. But I guess that's just a natural progression of things. You know, if somebody's your enemy, it doesn't matter what color he is, you're going to terrorize his nationality or race or creed or whatever. Especially if you win. Because I don't think anybody wins a war. But then that's just me. Let's get going. Let's keep going with this here.
In 1914, 24% of American high school students studied the German language. Later on, German language courses practically disappeared from schools. Streets, neighborhoods, suburbs, towns, foods, and breeds of dogs lost their German names. Many families with German surnames Americanized or anglicized them, or at least changed the names of their businesses. Dachshunds became Liberty Hounds.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Ooh. A few years ago, when America had an issue with France, they changed the word French fries to something else. What did they call it? Comment down below. I know they call it something else. You know what I mean? Instead of calling it, they wanted to stop saying French fries. They did it with the Germans. We're repeating history all over the place. Wow. Freedom fries. They use the word liberty there. So that's a railroad person. They didn't know that history. They didn't know that bloody history. Oh. See? You gotta study stuff, man, to know how the same all the political games they play and thing. You know what I mean? This is crazy. All right. Let's keep going.
Was to give it the more American, patriotic name of Liberty.
What go on with that? And stop it.
Resentment started to grow among some German Americans about how they had been treated during this time, as they reflected on how the German language and culture was admired by many Americans before the outbreak of the First World War. There was a growing admiration of how Germany had eventually recovered after the war under the National Socialist German Workers' Party to become a new dynamic and reinvigorated nation. So German Americans once again became proud of their heritage, and through such organizations as the German American Bund, reconnected with their Germanic roots. But this also meant that these immigrants were being more and more exposed to a glamorized version of German National Socialism. This was due to the German government in the 1930s having established strong links with the German American Bund, which had gained popularity, which in turn was becoming increasingly more fanatical and nationalistic in nature. So many felt it was their patriotic duty to return to Germany when it went to war with Britain in 1940. Each year in the 30s, many more Germans were returning to Germany from America than were emigrating there. It was the reverse of the previous trend. Those that did were mostly absorbed into combat units and fought alongside their new fellow countrymen. George Knapziger wrote in his German Order of Battle that the Waffen-SS had 5 U.S. Volksdeutsch, Americans of German descent. However, a lot of documentation regarding the immigration and repatriation of such soldiers did not survive the war. Such documents were kept in major cities that were bombed and are now lost in history. Therefore, the number of American Germans who went to fight for Germany during World War II is impossible to estimate. But some were put to specialist use as propaganda tools. Typical of this was Herbert Bergman, who was born in Minnesota to German immigrant parents. He had served in the U.S. State Department, and when the war broke out between Germany and the United States, he went to work as a broadcaster in Berlin for the German English-language radio station, Der Bunk.
Man, I wonder if his parents stayed back in Minnesota. Man, can you imagine what they had to live through? Knowing that their son was over there fighting with Hitler thing. They probably got totally ostracized. And he's on the radio talking and thing. I mean, look at what was her name? Hanoi Jane. I mean, she got blasted for years and years. And I've even heard some politicians use her as a way to describe other politicians that want some kind of a political thing that they want to do. Especially when it's in conjunction with immigrants. But man, can you imagine? Your parents migrated here, sort of acclimated into the culture. They get ostracized. You get nationalized, and you go back there. I wish they would say what happened to him. Did he die over there? Did he stay over there? Did he come back here? I'm gonna have to look up his name and see if they
Claimed
know
to
what
be
happened
the
to him.
voice of all free America, transmitting from somewhere in the Midwest, but in reality broadcast from Bremen, Germany. After the war, he was convicted of 13
There
acts
we
of
go.
treason. His defense was that he had been insane at the time, and he had been bullied into doing the broadcast by the Gestapo. Nevertheless, he was sentenced to between 6 and 20 years in prison and died
That's
in
what
federal custody in 1953.
that's what happened to him.
But by far the most notorious of these lost sons of the Reich was Martin James Monti, an American from Missouri whose mother was of German heritage. In 1942, he joined the United States Air Force and had qualified to fly the P-38 Lightning and P-39 Airacobra. Monty ended up being promoted to first lieutenant, but his loyalty seemed to always be to the new Germany. So when he ended up being stationed abroad to India in August 1944, he deserted. He managed to get a lift on a military cargo plane to Cairo, Egypt, then caught a follow-on flight to Tripoli, Libya. Afterward, he talked himself aboard a plane to the Allied-occupied Italian city of Naples. After a few days of maneuvering, he managed to requisition a Lockheed F-5E Lightning for a test flight. He stole this newly repaired American reconnaissance plane and defected to the Germans. The Luftwaffe quickly replaced the aircraft's U.S. markings and gave it a new call sign before sending it to Germany, where the repurposed plane served its new owners through to the war's end. At first, Monty was given work as a propaganda broadcaster in a propaganda unit called SS Standardkut under a pseudonym Captain Martin Weithal. In his broadcasts, he tried to convince American combat troops that the USA should fight alongside Nazi Germany against the Soviet Union. However, after only a few speeches, his job was changed to writing propaganda leaflets that were distributed to Allied prisoners of war. Monty even became an Untersturmführer in the Waffen-SS and was ordered to fight in northern Italy in April 1945. Shortly after his arrival in early May, the American-born Waffen-SS officer in German uniform surrendered to the U.S. Fifth Army in Milan and tried to convince them that he was an escaped American POW. At first, Monty was court-martialed for being AWOL and for misappropriation of the F-5E Lightning. He was found guilty and sentenced to 15 years of hard labor. At that early stage, prosecutors did not know of his defection or his propaganda activities on behalf of Germany. In early February 1946, President Harry S. Truman commuted his sentence to time served, contingent on his reenlistment in the Air Force as a private. Monty did so and within 2 years had climbed to the rank of sergeant. Meanwhile, the Army intelligence officials poring over captured records in Germany uncovered evidence of his contribution to the Nazi war effort. On November 1st, 1947, a Washington Post reporter broke the story. On January 26, 1948, minutes after the Army granted Monty an honorable discharge, the FBI arrested him.
Wow.
After psychiatrist Dean Monti
It's
fit
close.
to stand trial, a federal grand jury indicted him for 21 overt acts of treason. The minimum penalty was a 5-year prison term and a $10,000 fine. The maximum was death. Monty, during the trial, pleaded guilty. The judge imposed a prison sentence of 25 years and a fine of $10,000. Now, we will never know how many of those Americans with German heritage had responded to the call to return to the fatherland. It was not just answered from America, but also from around the world, though most likely in very small numbers. This episode...
That was totally interesting. You know what I mean? I wonder how many of them made it back here and not got caught as as traitors and stuff like that. I wonder how many of them made it back here. You know, this world's got a lot of I wonder how many, I wonder when, I wonder if. This is crazy. I mean, I kind of knew something like that would have happened, but you know, this is the first time I've actually watched a video, or even I've never read about it, and I never thought about it. But then, when you take into consideration how things are with like people going back to fight the jihadists, and the jihadists going back and fight the jihadists, with the quotation mark on there, and people getting recruited to go back and do all those fightings and stuff. It's not impossible to think that people go, I'm a proud job and I'm gonna go back to fight there. It's crazy. Anyway, man, thank you all for watching this with me. I'll leave a link in the description to this video. Go check out the video, check out the channel, see what I've won there, alright? Y'all take care of each other. Cool runnings.